Rich Sander here, and this is Moral Misfits. And today we have Jason Torpy, president of the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers. And today we're talking about the numbers don't lie. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Glad to be here. Doing fine. Fine, just fine.
Well, it was interesting to me when we were talking the other day to set up this particular show that you sent me some information from your website of what you posted, and we'll get into that into the show. But I think we want to give people a little bit more context about who you are. You're running this organization, this national organization. And if you really talk about the bases around the world, it's probably technically an international association, but it's for the U.S. military. But I think people want to get a sense of who you are as a humanist. You know, we have known you for, I don't know, was it at least 10 years, right?
More than that, yeah, sure.
So we want to. How do you describe yourself as a humanist? What's being a humanist mean to you?
I try not to lean too much into labels for the purpose of labeling myself or what it means to me. I just try to be a good person, but I think it's really valuable to be part of a community. Divided we fall, as they say. Also, I find that people that are a little bit too individualistic, it seems nice on the one hand to like run to the beat of your own drummer. That's fine, but it's really easy, especially if you're on your own, to get the wrong answer and then to convince yourself that you're right and not have enough people in part of a community to really challenge misconceptions or challenge personal ideas and whatnot. So I like the humanist community and the atheist community, the skeptic community. I like to be part of those communities, both to help support the good work that they're doing and also to make sure that I'm in the company of other good people that can kind of keep me on the straight and narrow as well.
Well, I think that's really important is that we talk about a lot of that on Moral Misfits about being part of a community, that we're social animals, that we're looking for other people who share that and want to be around other people who are, secular minded, that are atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, that they find that. And, you talk a little bit there about, this false logic about, I can decide everything myself. And, that's not really true. We have to test our own mettle, so to speak, against other people and what other people are saying and thinking and doing. And then saying, okay, this really makes sense to us. And as a humanist and as a secular minded person, I think about all kinds of sectors of society that we have: business, where people work, their education, government, and today we're going to talk about the military, that there is this overarching ethos or ethics that really apply to a lot of people, and that a lot of people out there may not realize that there are a lot of us out there. We talked in the previous shows really about what those numbers are and what it is to be a humanist. And another person that I talked to recently is John Rafferty, and I talked to him in conversation really what it is to be a humanist, and this is what he had to say. Are you a humanist?
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't even know what that was until I started getting the newsletter. And then I realized, that's exactly what I am. And it's amazing, a number of people who we built back up to almost 200 in terms of paid membership. But now, through social media, we're up to 400. But, nice. I only count the people who pay the money.
Exactly. Paid members.
But over and over again, I've heard the same people say the same thing that I said at the beginning. Oh, that's what I am. I didn't know what I was. I'm a humanist. And my late wife, Donna Marxer, used to say, a secular humanist is an atheist with good manners.
I like that.
And that works pretty well.
So would you also describe yourself as like a secularist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I my own background was a little bit like yours. I mean, from a Catholic background,
Yep.
but my parents didn't push it.
You were a cat licker too? Yes.
Yeah, right. So I didn't pay much attention to it. As a matter of fact, I had the usual bad experiences with the church and, just ignored it. The hell with it. Married a Jewish girl. We agreed that the kids whatever kids we had, would be brought up with no religion because we didn't care about it.
Yep.
I paid no attention to it. And I had 4 kids. And they all have kids, and none of them any religion whatsoever.
All secularists,
All
humanists,
all secular
all humanists, atheists.
And so I found out what I was. But the thing that got me started,
Yeah.
the early 90s, I'm reading the Times one morning, and on an inside page, like 12 or 14 or something like that, I see a picture. And it's of 40 some odd representatives and senators standing on the steps of the Capitol at a demonstration to honor the Reverend Sun Young Moon, who is a lunatic. Is he alive yet still? I don't
I don't
remember.
think so.
Huh?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But the guy actually believed he was God,
Yeah.
okay? He was also a tax thief and went to prison for it. And there's 40 some odd representatives of my government there to honor him. And I thought, what the hell is going on? What is going on in my country? And like I say, this is the early 90s, and we had Jerry Falwell and Newt Gingrich, who were screaming that really secular humanism, quote unquote, secular humanism is the worst problem the country has ever faced. Newt Gingrich actually said on television once, secular humanism in America is a greater threat than Nazi Germany and Soviet communism ever was.
Wow.
And George Stephanopoulos looked at him and said, you really think that?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I figured I ought to know these people. If Newt Gingrich doesn't like them, I ought to know.
Yeah.
So that's why I somehow did something or other that somebody put me on the mailing list for the newsletter, and that started the ball rolling.
Wow.
That's how I got it.
So John was really having fun talking about Reverend Moon and government and how all these people are really, in a way pandering to religion in a way that bothered him and it bothers me. But as an atheist, and we come together and we realize that there is this thing called humanism, and then we realize, oh, what is that? Oh, yeah, he had mentioned that his wife had said, a secular humanist is just a really nice atheist, And I think that's something that we all try to aspire to, is being nice people and to doing things that are nice. But I think what he was really talking about is that, it kind of scares me, or scares him, and it scares me too, about sometimes there's politicians and government and agencies that are not really looking out for the best interest of everyone, that there's this big disconnect, right? Between.
Yeah. I mean, I like the woman's perspective. I mean, his wife talked a little bit more about manners, right? John was talking about conflict, problems and issues, and the need to speak up and fight back. And I think that's important. But, I like what his wife said was, it's an atheist with good manners. and I think that's one of the perspectives that you start to appreciate being part of the community and interacting with a lot of other atheists who kind of have the same mindset and go along different paths. You start to see some trends emerge. And one of the trends is when you're coming from a religious background, especially the more evangelical background, when you first become atheist, when you first become enlightened and start to understand that the world is how it is, and you can best understand that through science, you start to realize that you've been lied to, and that can be hurtful. And you start to see some of the manipulation in religious teachings and religious communities that can be hurtful as well. You start to lash out. And then when you speak up and start to ask questions or start to push back or really start to challenge some of these religious narratives and dogma, communities, community structures and taboos that don't really fit objectively or scientifically, they're not really beneficial to society. They just kind of perpetuate the religious community. When you start to push back on that, the religious community is very often more populous, more powerful, and able to really provide oppression in a way that exacerbates that original trauma of being lied to and manipulated. And people get angry. So that progression goes, really starts with a lot of anger and need to vent. And I think people need a lot of support during that time and need a lot of freedom to really say what they haven't been able to say before. But over time, this idea of good manners, I think, comes out a lot more. People, when they've been part of the community for a long time, not everybody obviously, but for the most part, people tend to move from the angry, combative atheist perspective over to a humanist perspective that gets down to what I think is a lot harder work, not of doing church state cases, which is very difficult technically and very important constitutionally, but there's a context for that. What's really hard and what people, I think over time move towards is a very difficult work of building humanist community, understanding our values, building community structures, building, taboos even with our own community, which are not hard to pick and not hard to decide and really hard to step forward for, really hard to assert and even enforce in our own communities when we have this troublesome background of dogmatic and hierarchical religious communities, and we're trying to build something new, but something positive as well. And it's really hard work.
Oh, it's very hard work. You know me, I've been involved for a long time, was involved a little bit before I met you in New York City. And it is hard work for those people who want to organize and realize that this is something important, because I have a lot of people, and I know you've had a lot of people say, I just didn't know that there were other people like us out there. I felt alone. And there's really not a need for that, to say that, because we need to find safe spaces for people to be able to come out and say, I'm a secularist, I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, I'm agnostic, I'm science-based in my thinking, and do it in a way that they don't get put upon and saying, oh, that's terrible. Religion has all kinds of different ways of describing how horrible that is to not have God. And it's like, well, we think this is a great way to understand the world and treat each other in a good way. And I'm putting myself out there to say, I'm one of those things. I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, I'm secular. In most places, it happens in a lot of different avenues in their life. And being from New York, or living in New York for a long time, it's easier to have a secular life and to tell people you're secular. But you get out in the rest of the country, it's sometimes not so easy. And it's interesting to see those particular statistics. And I think your experience, very, very important, critical work, is with those people who are serving our country in one of the different services, to find a place where they can say and talk to other people who are like them. I see in this on your website, you put out a paper talking about, what's the makeup of the military? What's that general population like? And then also, how's that supported? Well, one of the ways it's supported, and most people may know this, is they have chaplains in the military. and it's to serve those people who are religious. And you've been working very hard to try to have a humanist chaplain in the military, and there is 0 in the military as we speak. You have it broken down to which religion people are identifying with. There's a lot that aren't identifying, but there's really kind of a small segment that are evangelical Christians, like 13, 14%, but then there's 69% of the chaplains. There's a real disconnect there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in what you're talking about. It again. So, with the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, and providing that global community, primarily online, but also in person for atheists and foxholes. And it's important. I mean, the military is kind of famously conservative. There's a big variety within the military. I mean, it's not 100% conservative, but what we see in the general population with the kind of difficulty of speaking up and being who you are, if you're not an evangelical Christian or a white male for that matter, those pressures are prevalent in the military, and the military really exacerbates the need to conform in any community. And there's reasons for that in the military, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but one of the pitfalls, one of the negative expressions of that is really an increased difficulty to come out as atheists in the military and to be part of the team and really be part of the military family when you're not toeing the line for Christianity. And that's really difficult. So that's what MAF, Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, provides, is a place for people to turn and say, okay, I see what this community looks like. I see that there's other people like me, and we've had members around the world, from Japan to Afghanistan and Seattle, Tampa, all across the country, all across the world, and 20 different countries as well. I mean, there's been members in Israel, Saudi Arabia, a lot of places you wouldn't think, with atheists and foxholes serving in other militaries that don't have church-state separation, that even don't have, you can still live if you want to if you're atheist. I mean, there's real dangers for these people, and they're reaching out for that community. So whether or not there are church-state violations throughout our government, which there are, and throughout our military, which there are, regardless what sort of evangelical infiltration there is within our government, what MAF wants to provide is not kind of a place to fight, not a place to be a plaintiff, but just a place to be yourself. And we want to provide that community around the country, and the advocacy work that we do is for the purpose of supporting that community and supporting those individuals serving our country around the world, and really kind of a difficult evangelical community of the larger culture of the military.
Prior to the pandemic, what are the kind of things that you guys did to help those people in the different services?
Yeah, for the most part, what we like to do is empower non-military groups to support the military communities. And we have chapters on installations from Fort Bragg, San Diego military community. We've had local groups form in those larger military communities all across the country, especially overseas where it's more needed. But to the extent that we can, what we like to do is plug in with the civilian community. And what they can do is get veterans within their population, just acknowledge those veterans and tell their stories for the larger non-atheist community. So what that civilian atheist community can do is say, hey, we have veterans, we're doing parades, we're going out to the VA hospital, we're kind of highlighting our veterans, really as kind of a minority community. We're highlighting our veterans and telling everyone else in the community military service and national service is not the sole activity of evangelical Christians.
Yeah, I think that you put it in an interesting way that people in the community can understand that there are these challenges within the military, but they can also do things in their own community to help support the military and those people who are non-theist or not religious or non-theist, that they they can support those people, and they can do those sort of things wherever they live. And we obviously have a big election coming up, and I'm a secular voter, and I think that a lot of people think that that might kind of end there, and I don't think so. I think there's a lot of things you can do, is be involved with your local humanist, atheist, skeptics group or a free thought group. Be a part of those groups, and when this issue comes up, that you support those people in the military, and you have those conversations. I think it's going to be a lot of conversations one-on-one with people in the community that may serve in the military, and that they support them if they are religious or non-religious, that they mention that as a thing, that more and more people get to realize what's going on is there's more of the community as a whole in the rest of the country is supporting those people who are non-theistic, or they're non-religious, and that there's an important thing that they can do is to support that, and that can help culture over time.
Yes. And I agree. And a lot of, as I travel around and talk to different atheist and humanist communities, there's a lot of support for peace, which I really appreciate. And, there's a difference between peace and pacifism. Some individuals or communities, they're pacifists, and they are entirely hostile to military service and not really open to discussing that. And I respect that. But for the most part, there's an appreciation for peace, which is to say, military service and the usage of our military around the world is a huge problem. And those conversations are very important and very much within the realm of humanism. And I think people who have served in the military are best in a position to provide their experience to do that. And I think, what people will find is a lot of those veterans within those humanist communities and the active duty people that may be, around the military installations, having them talk about their experiences can do a lot to further that message of peace. And I think that's a big benefit that a lot of the ideological humanist communities can benefit from and would be interested in.
Well, I think you're right, and I think it's an important thing that people realize that military is just not all about war, that there's a lot more to that, and that it's an important aspect that people can have a conversation about the military in a lot of different ways. And it's just not all about, warmongering and, trying to solve crises throughout the world. It's really about having a conversation cross culture, cross countries, that the world in a sense, because of social media and plane travel, that a lot of people get around the world a lot easier now these days than ever before. Well, pre-pandemic, but it's something that we can have those conversations. And I've been continuously surprised in my travels around the United States and Canada, and where I've been over in Europe, that the people are just generally nice, and they want to have a friendly conversation. They want to be nice to other people, that it's natural to them. In the statistics, there's a lot of people that just don't identify any religion, and or they consider themselves non-religion or religious and stuff. That's a community that definitely needs to be served too. But there is this stigma within the military that it's really hard to speak out. It's really hard to go against that grain. And you're fighting the good fight, I think. It's something that what other things can we do to really kind of help with that?
Well, I think I mentioned a few of those things. The outreach, first of all, talk to your veterans is the most important thing. MAF can provide ideas, but do a survey. Say, hey, we're having a veterans appreciation event. And then say, listen, I know if you're a veteran, maybe you're shy or humble and don't want to be recognized, but the local community leaders should say that they appreciate that feedback. And a lot of local leaders are veterans themselves and don't necessarily want to puff themselves up or put themselves in the spotlight in that way. But I think it's important to do, because what people need to understand is when there are Veterans Appreciation event, or atheists marching in Memorial Day parades and things like that, you have, first of all, an option to have a message of peace. You don't have to bash veterans or military service in order to have a message of peace, especially if it's not really that context. You can still be in a parade, support peace, and support the veterans who serve there. And I think that visibility is important. And the community says, oh, there are atheists in foxholes. They do appreciate military service. They have, maybe have more of a preference for peace as opposed to just waving a flag and cheering for guns, right? We might be a little bit more thoughtful about our patriotism, but it's still there and it's still valid. And there's also, I think it's also important to, there are a lot of young people, 18-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old that have just started their service, or maybe they're considering service, even teenagers, that, they haven't necessarily had those deep thoughts that somebody who's 40 or 50 has had. They haven't necessarily read a lot, and they may be more in a position where family and friends have a certain influence on them, or they have certain goals for their life. Maybe they don't have a lot of prospects in terms of having straight A's, or having, parents who can pay for college, or really visibility outside their local community. And a lot of those kids, you can say it's exploitative, but a lot of those kids, for whatever reason, are benefiting from training and going into the military. And whether they benefit or not, or whether you think they're benefiting or not, that's maybe the path that their life is taking. And because they're young, and because they don't necessarily know, like, maybe this is a mistake, if you consider it a negative thing, that support is still valid. Having that influence in their life is still valid, and will still ensure that they're the best expression of humanists or atheists and foxholes that they can be, if they do choose to join the military. And I think there's a lot of value in a community that supports people, even when they're not necessarily making decisions that the community 100% approves of. Right? There's a, I think it's not really our position to say, hey, if you do something that we don't like, you're out of the community forever.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a line, if you axe murder somebody, then you're out of the community forever, right? There's consequences to that. Maybe not forever, but there certainly has to be consequences. You don't get to be a happy axe murderer doing whatever it is you're doing. But most communities don't equate serving in the military with being an axe murderer. Most communities can see basically all people who are serving in the military, especially to the extent that they're 20, 21, 22-year-olds, the young people out there, they're in a position to better their lives, to influence others, and to benefit from the positive influence of humanist mentors and humanist communities.
So if there was an organization in a suburb or a group of people and stuff, and they wanted to appreciate the veterans and stuff, but they don't have let's say, the connection with the military, how would they approach that? How would they go about saying, okay, we want to have a Veterans Appreciation Day, Veterans Day is coming up soon. There's a Veterans Day every year. Maybe that's an annual event that a secular community would want to celebrate and to honor those veterans. How would they go about, finding people that would, so they could honor those people, and they could say, hey, we're here to support you in what you're doing? How do they do that?
Yeah, so situation number one is local civilian group is, there really doesn't have any veterans or any veterans who are active in leadership. See that as a problem. And let me be clear, minority communities like Black, Indigenous, people of color, minority communities like the LGBT community, those communities are being killed, and atheists and foxholes are, suffering a lot of issues, but it's different a lot in nature, but a lot of the lessons about how to invite those communities, and I hope every local group is doing that, they apply just the same to veterans communities. So look for veterans in your group and put them in charge. Look for veterans. If you don't have any veterans in your group, acknowledge that as a shortfall, as a problem of diversity, and reach out and find those in the community. But even if you just have an event and don't necessarily know what you're doing, but put a veterans label on it, that's a good start. But what you'll find is reaching out to those veterans communities and supporting what they're doing. That's a very good way to do it. It's particularly difficult with the veterans communities because the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion, those are kind of the bigger groups. They're basically just church. It's a problem.
Yeah.
But your individual post, whether it's a Legion post or a VFW post, may be perfectly open to that. But there's also Disabled American Veterans. There's Veterans of Modern Wars, which is, I think, part of the VFW. There's Modern Military Veterans of America. And a lot of those other groups are out there. They're relatively large. Team Red, White, and Blue, I wanted to mention as well. Some of those newer groups are not quite so entrenched with the evangelism, and essentially kind of day-to-day church procedures that other groups are. But look around, see what those groups are doing and support what they're doing, just like you would, local Black Lives Matter or an LGBT group. Don't pretend that you can do what they do better than they already do. And if you want them to participate in what you're doing, go there and participate in what they're doing. You don't have to have a separate event every time, just have a joint event. So those are really good things. If you're not beside a military installation, those are good ways. Look for your veterans and look for veterans outside in the community and support what they're doing.
Well, they're definitely everywhere in the country because they retire out of the military or they serve in the military and they go back to their home community. So they are everywhere. I just sometimes think that we have to be, as humanists, we have to be careful about how we do that. And I think that that's one of the things that we should talk a little bit about is that we don't want to do it as a showy event or wear it as a badge of honor that we, support gays and gay and transgendered and bisexual individuals. We put it as a Boy Scout badge. It's like, I do that. And then it's military atheist. We don't want to come off that way. It is really caring about our whole community and talking about it in that context, that there are all these communities that are disenfranchised one way or another by the religiosity of family or work or their local community, but also those people that are serving the military that, we generally want to say to them, it's, you're not alone. The numbers don't lie. There's a lot of people who are secular minded or science minded and want to use that to be a better soldier or be a better person in the military.
Yeah, I say wear it as a badge of honor. You don't have to do it every single day, and you don't have to, and you don't want to wear it as a badge of honor in service of tokenism. You don't want to be shallow about it, but yes, wave that flag, whether it's supporting veterans or supporting Black Lives Matter or supporting indigenous persons, especially they're all over the country as well. Remember, they were here first, right? Ask yourself, anybody who's listening, whose land was it before Europeans showed up? If you don't know that for your local community, that's a pretty basic piece of information that you should have. And, all these things, it's important to stand up and say, hey, we support whatever, we support our community, which is atheists and humanists, whatever kind of flavor that you have for your local group. But part of your community is going to be women. It's going to be people of color. It's going to be veterans. And if you haven't stood up and waved their flag or gone out to their kind of specific groups and said, hey, how can we help you? Then you're saying you don't want them as part of your group. So stand up and wave that flag, wear it as a badge of honor, and do it in support of them, not in support of yourself. And I think that's a good way to make sure that nobody's confused. Your potential members aren't confused. Your community's not confused. They know where you stand. And that's something that has to be done, and it has to be done very clearly, relatively frequently, or else people will think you don't care.
But I think it really starts with the community. And once you have people in the community, you can start to reach out to more people and say, come on, come and join us. Come and hang out with us. Humanists are nice, they're kind, they're generous, they're giving, they're thoughtful, they're empathetic. These are all good qualities that, whether even if you're religious or not, those are good qualities to have. And I think that sometimes we're we're in situations where other people don't respect that. But there's also going to be these opportunities to say, hey, we have people in the military and we want to welcome them into our community and say that they are a part of our secular community. They are humanists, they are atheists and free thinkers. And, those are important things that we need to do. And I hope that Moral Misfits helps to do that. And what you're doing very specifically is focusing in on what is needed in the military. And I hope that if people have the means and the opportunities to help your organization out, that would be great. They can go to the militaryatheist.org website, and also steer somebody who is maybe a veteran or somebody who's maybe active duty to go to that website and check things out. And sometimes it's about service, giving to others and helping other people out, but sometimes you need that service to yourself. People who are new to becoming an atheist, like when I was religious and then I became an atheist and I decided I no longer believe that. The thing I missed was the community, having a community to go to. So I created it for myself, and a lot of those people are my friends. And I'm hoping that people that are veterans and people that are active duty can find their friends that are sharing the same kind of values and ethics that they do. And your message about peace is so powerful, and that people have an opportunity to become who they are. That they may serve the military for a while, but that's not the only definition of who they are. That they can be more, they can be different, they can do other things. And I sat down with John Wagner back in the spring, and we were talking about humanism, what humanism is, and stuff. And I asked him about it, and this is what he had to say.
No, I think that's a really interesting thing when you talk about humanist values. To the idea of flourishing and you're doing something you find worthwhile, and different people find different things really worthwhile. I found being a scientist and trying to make discoveries worthwhile, trying to educate the next generation of scientists was something that was really good for me. On the other hand, for other people, there are a lot of other things that are really worthwhile and valuable. Being in the military and trying to ensure international peace is something that is really valuable. We can't have a good democratic government without a good military. So people want to do that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to go out and become a woodworker and make beautiful cabinets, that's absolutely fine. That's a real value. You want to make people look beautiful by styling their hair or designing their clothes or fabric, that's fine. But I think everybody should feel that one of the things that is an important part of their life is that they're contributing to other people and doing something of value to other people. When I was trying to think and working as a lifeguard, when you have a lot of time to think, especially on colder days, out there, what are the values? What do you want out of life? Well, one of the things I wanted out of life is to have a career that I felt satisfying and was interesting. And you think, well, what could that career be? In high school, I had no idea what I was going to be. Yeah. Eventually, you figure it out. But you think about all these possibilities. And I think I could have been happy doing lots and lots of different things. But everybody finds their own path. And I think it is a humanist value to say that everybody should have a career or a life work that is really satisfying to them and that really adds to human society. Whether you're a grade school teacher or a college teacher, whether you're a shoe designer or a sales clerk, all those things are of value. And if you feel like by filling that niche, you're making society better and making people happy, that'll make you happy. Because one of the basic things I realized in terms of thinking about ethics and human society is that we're a member of society. That's one of the things that's so uniquely human. There are lots of species have a little bit of a social interaction, but human beings do it so much better than any other species. Our ability to interact and gain from other people, to pass on knowledge. People write things down 500 years ago and all of a sudden we pick it up and learn it. We write things that other people will enjoy in 100 years. You write a novel in 1980 and in 2500 somebody will maybe be reading that and enjoying it. We get together and we can make so many things happen. We can put a man on the moon. or we can do horrible things sometimes too together.
Well, the future
Right?
might
So-
be mining our trash dumps and saying, what the hell are they thinking by doing this?
No, that's true. And you don't really know the right path necessarily.
Yeah.
But you have to do the best you can. And
So John Wagner was really talking about, that it's important that people can be who they want to be, and that they have an opportunity to do that. And he even mentioned the military. If they want to be in the military and help with world peace, as you mentioned, that's a great thing, but to have that opportunity takes all of us to give people that room, that space in which they can grow as a particular person and learn and feel comfortable. And there are a lot of places they're not feeling comfortable where they can do that.
Yeah, I find the most important thing for the humanist perspective, as I understand it, is to kind of increase your capacity to take joy in the successes of others. I think it's just really helpful to say, okay, well, I know what I enjoy, and I know what I want to do to make myself feel better, to make myself, it's whether it's pleasure or fulfillment. If you can take pleasure in what others are doing, in addition to your own pleasure, then I think that's really a leg up. And because if you wake up and have a bad day, or something that you want to do you can't necessarily do, especially in the time of pandemic, maybe you always want to go out and just have a good time, talking closely with friends, and that's not necessarily available, playing basketball or something like that. If you are going out to soup kitchen, or building a house, or doing something that gives back to the community, or just bringing around some food for some people, those sorts of community development activities, and supporting friends and family, and kind of extended family and chosen family, when you can really enjoy those sorts of activities that build the community and make the world a better place, then you're just more likely to be happier, because there are more people in the world than just one person, just yourself. And so that way you may or may not have a good day, but if you're also hanging your hat on lots of other people in your community, then it's far more likely that you'll be able to have a good day, to enjoy yourself, and then others enjoy themselves, and then you have a more you're part of an interconnected community and a mutually supportive community. So in terms of building capacity and being a better person, I think that's just a really important thing to keep in mind.
Well, as a humanist, that's kind of what it's all about. It's about being a better person and having that and being able to as we're younger, we get the chance to express ourselves, test ourselves, to learn more. And as Wagner said, when he was in high school, he had no idea what he wanted to do, but at some particular point, he said he wanted to make his life worth something and mean something and be of value. And he found that in being a scientist and a teacher of the next generation of scientists. Those are all great things that he realized for himself, but everybody has that potential. And we are in a time that our culture is a little tough for getting everybody to that potential. Some people have economic problems that cause them to not have those same kind of opportunities. They may want to go to college, but they don't have the economic opportunity to go to college. Or even just giving the moral support to somebody saying, I want to serve the military. I want to be a force for peace in the world. I know that it's important for that aspect, and I'm a humanist and I'm proud of it. We need other people to support that. And I've heard this from many people that the military is pretty religious, and it's tough to come out as an atheist. And, that saddens me quite a bit. And that's part of your work, is try to create an environment you're allowed to do that. It'd be great to see a humanist chaplain, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's 5,000 chaplains in the military, and getting them to support everybody instead of just themselves would be nice. And the focus right now is, we have the situation that we have. There's a lot of work that can be done to improve that. But for right now, MAF, primary support is doing care packages and local group support. I want to send a shout out to a few few volunteers. There are too many to thank right now, but Thomas Gray at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska has a really good community. Ray Dirksen, he was doing naval basic training support. Vicki Getman has been for years having the largest gathering of humanists in the world weekly, 1,000, 1,500, sometimes 2,000 people
Wow.
at Air Force basic training. It's really amazing, and they won't say a word about it. So there's good work can be done, especially when there's a little bit of a door open, even if the military wants to keep it on the down low. There's a lot of good things going on, but what we know, not on the down low, right in the light of day, is that 5,000 military chaplains won't support humanists. Basic training communities, for the most part, except for those good exceptions, for the most part, don't have humanist services. And if you're in one of those local areas and want to try to reach out to support enlistment processing stations or your local VA hospital, military bases, basic training groups in particular, or academies, that support's much needed, and it's a fight to get in the door, but the support's much needed, and we can't make chaplains change, but we can support those atheists and foxholes that are out there, and maybe one day, they'll kind of see that we're part of the team as well, and chaplains, will support troops instead of supporting themselves. So
do you find any support amongst, let's say, Jewish or Catholic chaplains, that they're fighting kind of the same fight, because they're underrepresented in the military also, to do that? Do you find that there's any alignment there to have it more representative of the population?
Catholic chaplains are just the same as any evangelical. They're
really?
in the power position. They don't have enough chaplains, but that's because there aren't enough Catholics. And there are a lot of Catholics in the military, or not enough Catholic priests, and there are a lot, but they have all the support and leadership and funding. The military, for the most part, spends its money on recruiting Catholics, even though the Catholic Church is probably the only organization in the world that does not need the help of the U.S. military, relative to the amount of resources that they have. And Jewish personnel, the unfortunate thing is Jewish chaplaincy in the military is basically controlled exclusively by the conservative and Orthodox denominations. It's hard, or explicitly not allowed at this point, for some of those endorsers to be a Reform or a Reconstructionist Jew, certainly not a Humanist Jew. To be a chaplain, you have to be one of the conservative Orthodox denominations. So even that avenue among the Jewish chaplains is locked down. And some of the more open-minded, there's a lot of good denominations out there that you would think would be open-minded, and they are supportive to the extent they can be, but because the power structure within the chaplaincy is controlled by the political evangelicals, those people who would otherwise be friendly just have enough problems on their own, just trying to have women chaplains, which is a challenge. I mean, the chaplaincy is really in a problematic space, and I say that not relative to what we would want. I say that relative to the civilian chaplaincy, non-military chaplains. They are much more open-minded, and there are humanist chaplains all throughout the country, and there are humanist chaplains in other militaries. It's just the United States military chaplaincy is so controlled by political evangelicals that they've managed to exclude diversity and of basically any kind outside evangelical Christianity, and supporters like Catholics and the Jewish chaplains that are in power right now.
Well, I think that the numbers don't lie when you see that there is this offset power dynamic, that there's so few people in the military who are themselves evangelical as the population in the military, but the chaplaincy's so many times more. It's not there by accident. It was done on purpose, and it was done in the background, and it was done in a way that's not fair. We talked last week with John Engel, and we were talking specifically about the numbers of people who are identifying as non-religious is growing, and the number of people who are identifying religious is going down quite a bit. And this next year, 2021, is the next year that Pew does their research in terms of the number of people who are religious and how they're identifying themselves. So I hope that a lot more people are going to identify themselves as secular or atheist, agnostic, or humanist. So we can really start to see that in the future that we have examples of that. Like in Europe, there are some countries that have 50% of the population identifies as humanist. That would be fantastic here. And that we can have this political power that really speaks to being really kind and nice and generous and empathetic to everybody. And that there's not this one lopsided power dynamic that really keeps people from feeling comfortable in their own work or their own service to the country and stuff. I mean, they're doing so much already. And then on top of it, to make them feel like they have to go to a service or they have to do that or they have to acknowledge that in order to at least have friends in the military. I find that as unethical. And today we're talking about, the numbers, they kind of speak for themselves. We're a growing population. More and more people are identifying that way. A lot more people are using science to understand their world, their natural world, what they can do. More people want to be scientists and help the world progress and be better. It's great to hear that some bases and some people in the military are working hard to create that space, but we need more of it, right? We just need to work hard to really find those particular people who are willing to give up their time, effort, and energy to help the cause, so to speak, and to have this world be a better place. And I think the military is one place that we got a lot of work to do, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, showing those numbers is important because sure, humanists are nice or whatever, but some of us are jerks as well, right? Atheists and humanists, at this point, the community is large enough to say that we have all sorts. Yep. And whether you like us or not, whether they're the nicest person in the world or whether we're kind of on a spectrum, just like the general population, we're here. And Dr. Navarro does secular surveys, and I hope you can put that link up and point people at the surveys that he's doing. I think that's really important. 538 is kind of a general population. It's for political horse race kind of analysis. They do a lot of sports as well to kind of bring people in because they appreciate that people care more about sports than they do politics.
Yes.
And the statistics will work either way. But 538 is a very well-known political site, and they just recognize some of the work that he's doing. So when they bring up surveys from, Washington Post surveys or Reuters or Gallup, they also bring in the surveys that Dr. Navarro is doing, and that's specifically for the secular community that he's pulling in, that they specialize in. And those publications I think are really good. And I think as he expands from some of the general kind of political questions and maybe expands in military community, they can plug into some of the work that we've done to do Freedom of Information Act requests to pull demographics from the military that you mentioned about what the general population kind of on your dog tags religion are versus the endorsing agencies, those churches that are sending chaplains to the military. As you said, the representation of kind of the political evangelical Christians in the chaplaincy is 3 times what it is in the general population. And then, overall in the chaplaincy, it's 97, 98% Christian. And the rest, that 2%, is every single other denomination other than the Christian, Catholic, Mormon type. Mm-hmm. And this is information that we've gathered several times over the course of 10 years. So those demographics are available, and it's directly from the Department of Defense through Freedom of Information Act. And it really is chilling, as you said. So
yeah,
I think knowing that community is very important to push us forward, to say, whether you like us or not, whether you think we're the nicest people in the world, there's plenty of us, and nobody in the United States should think, oh, I didn't know there were atheists. I didn't know there were other atheists like me. I didn't know where I could find a community. We're past that. The communities are everywhere. They're not as strong as they should be, but making those communities stronger is, I think, where we are now. We don't have to wonder if they're there or wonder if other atheists are there, because we know they are in every part of life.
I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate that. Gave us a lot of food for thought there to think about. And I hope that, people see what that military service and post-military service is something that they can come and find within our community and be a part of our community, that it's that they're welcomed and they're sought after, and we'll work hard at doing that, and we'll try to do that more in the future and be better at it. So thank you again, and thanks for being part of the show today.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And you've been watching Moral Misfits.